Today we are going to talk about one of the most controversial and heartbreaking love stories in the history of wrestling, and that is of course the story of Macho Man Randy Savage, Miss Elizabeth and Lex Luger. So if you like daily wrestling content, discussions and wrestling community, join the channel today. The stories and information I'm going to go through now has all been backed up in autobiographies, biographical documentaries by the WWE themselves, police reports, and other interviews by wrestlers who were in the situations themselves, seeing what Macho Man Randy Savage and Elizabeth were doing on a daily basis. In 1985, not only was Macho Man one of the biggest stars in wrestling, but he was one of the biggest attractions. And then he brought in Elizabeth. Macho Man and Elizabeth were already a couple when she was brought into WWF television, and when she was introduced to the fans, everyone completely fell in love with her, referring to her as a first lady of professional wrestling. The wrestling world fell in love with their chemistry and fell in love with Elizabeth, but behind the curtain, it was not all as it seemed. There's been multiple interviews, reports, and documentaries about the way Macho Man treated Elizabeth during their relationship. He was completely possessive and deeply insecure about his relationship with Liz and the other wrestlers surrounding her. It's been said by multiple people in the industry at the time that Liz wasn't allowed to speak to anyone, look at anyone, or even go anywhere without Randy by her side. In documentaries and interviews from Hulk Hogan, Eric Bischoff, Bruce Pritchard, Honky Tonk Man, and Jake the Snake Roberts, they document this all very vividly. One of the most talked about things about the relationship was the way Randy used to lock her in the locker room, take the key to the ring with him, and not let her out. He would check on her every 10 to 15 minutes to make sure nobody got into the room, she never got out of the room, and nobody could talk to her. This was their relationship. Now, as you can probably understand, Randy was probably doing this to protect Liz from the industry. As you can probably understand, there's a lot of fidelity and a lot of adultery that goes on behind the scenes in wrestling, and Randy did not want that to happen. He was completely infatuated and in love with Elizabeth and didn't want anyone looking at her. During this suffocating relationship, Elizabeth suffered deeply. She began taking anxiety and depression pills and began to spiral, and the relationship began to dwindle and dwindle. Funnily enough, at the lowest point of their relationship, the WWF at the time, in SummerSlam 1991, put on a fake wedding. This was at the time that Liz and Randy were already on the rocks. So in 1992, just after SummerSlam, Elizabeth left the WWF and she also left Randy Savage, seeing a producer and hiding from him as much as she could. During this time, this is where Randy Savage's career was heading to a halt, before leaving WWF to go to WCW and completely reinventing himself and his look. Randy didn't want to get old. He tried to act as young as possible, be as young as possible, and tried to remain as relevant as possible in the wrestling industry. His paranoia was not only limited to his relationship, but also his career. In 1996, when Savage was in WCW, Elizabeth was brought in by Eric Bischoff. Randy Savage gave her blessing to come to the company, but they were not together at all at this time. During this period, Randy Savage was abusing drugs, alcohol, and depression and anxiety pills heavily. And as he was already spiraling, it didn't make it any better that Lex Luger started seeing Elizabeth. Elizabeth was brought into the company as his manager, and they began to see each other outside of the wrestling business. Due to the nature of the industry, Lex Luger was also hooked on pills, alcohol, and drugs, and he brought Liz into his chaotic spiral. In Lex Luger's own words, in his autobiography, he did say he was addicted to painkillers, depression medication, alcohol, and any drug he could find, especially steroid abuse. From the years 2000 to 2003 is when Lex Luger was having an affair with Liz, left his wife, and started a public relationship in 2003. In April of 2003, the police were called to their unit where Lex Luger was arrested for battery. Elizabeth had multiple bruises on her face and swelling, and Lex was arrested, sentenced to jail time. At this time of their chaotic spiral and relationship, not only was Lex Luger addicted to drugs and alcohol, so was Elizabeth. The sweet, innocent girl that we were introduced to in WWF television in the 80s was now addicted. A mere 2 weeks after that battery took place and Lex Luger was arrested, on May 1st, 2003, Liz was found unresponsive and dead in her apartment due to an accidental overdose with a mixture of vodka, alcohol, and depression and anxiety pills. Due to the death of Elizabeth and his guilt for the situation, Lex Luger spiraled out of control, going deeper and deeper into depression, alcohol, and drug abuse. Not only did this end his career, but it almost ended his life. Due to the steroid and drug abuse, he had a near-fatal spinal infection, which he is still dealing with today. He is currently in a wheelchair and can barely walk. As for Randy Savage's life after WCW, he also began to spiral. He did start to plateau later in his life, but he ended up dead from a heart attack while driving. Eric Bischoff, Hulk Hogan, and multiple other wrestling personalities have weighed in on the situation, and they've all said the same thing. Randy never recovered from the loss of his relationship with Elizabeth, and he spiraled out of control. Much like Lex Luger, who eventually found God and has reinvented himself in his later years. But for Randy, it was too late. This is a truly tragic story in wrestling. Not only was Macho Man one of the most iconic figures of wrestling in the 80s and 90s, but he also holds up today in pop culture and folklore. Elizabeth, the First Lady of Wrestling, who knows what she could have turned out to be if her life and relationships were less abusive. As mentioned, Lex Luger has found God and is on his road to recovery. But this is a story that happens all too often in wrestling.